Welcome, everyone. This is Cynthia Jewers, and I'm here with my compadre in these things, David Nickel, author of Subtle Activism and great leader in the subtle activist movement. We do a lot together, and we had a little moment of getting me up to speed with the technology that we're using today. So please pardon me for that distraction, but we're ready to go now. David, I think you wanted to say hello and start us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad. I'm very honored to be introducing you via Cynthia to this beautiful new practice that she's developed today. And we wanted to begin just to set the field here with a short time of silence. So I invite you to just please settle, arrange yourself comfortably, and we're just going to close our eyes and move into silence for a moment here with Cynthia.
Thanks, David. Yes, let's start with a bell to just drop in a little more deeply to this exploration, and then I'll lead some opening verses that will facilitate that process, and we'll sit for just another minute before going further. Perfection of wisdom, mother of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and all beings, nourishing, holding, and healing all, great Mother Earth, precious jewel of the cosmos, to you we bow in gratitude. We take refuge in the earth as our teacher, the one who shows us the way in this life. We take refuge in the earth as an expression of the Dharma, the teachings of interbeing, understanding, and love. We take refuge in the earth as an embodiment of the Sangha, the vast interdependent community of life in balance and harmony. Living within the web of life on earth, we dedicate ourselves to embodying awakened awareness on the path of healing in service to all beings. We dedicate our lives to realizing our oneness with Gaia.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everyone. And welcome again. So, as I said, I'm honored to be part of this process of introducing you to this new practice and that dedication that we just did to realize our unity with Gaia is at the heart of this new impulse. It feels like is arising in many different spiritual traditions now to align our spiritual practice with Gaia. And Cynthia has done as much as anyone to be at the forefront of this movement. So I know that many of you, most of you do know Cynthia already, but you know, she is the founder of Alliance for the Earth, and with that, the Earth Treasure Vase project, which we're going to touch on shortly. Many of you will know Cynthia from that context. And she is a Lama in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I was there when that happened. And also deeply immersed in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition and a Zen priest in that tradition. But you know, Cynthia is a dear friend of mine. We've walked the path together now for quite some time, and it's been such a deep honor to be on this path with you, Cynthia, and in particular to share this love of aligning our spiritual practice with Earth, and to be looking to Earth as where we can take refuge, where that is perhaps our most trustworthy guide and teacher. So I'm so happy to be in this role today, to be supporting you in bringing out this particular practice, this adaptation of Buddhist practice for our times, for Gaia. So let's do it. Perhaps we could start, Cynthia, with just a little context for people about where this Tara Gaia practice emerged from. And specifically, many people on the call, I presume, do know about the Earth Treasure Vase project, but still, I think it would be good to start there, since it feels like that project gave rise to so much of this. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief overview about this magnificent project to go all around the world, burying these treasure vases, carrying the prayers of so many people for the healing of the earth. But if you could just fill that out a bit for especially people who don't know about that work.
Thank you, David. I'm feeling very emotional being here, hearing you bring us into this moment, and just feeling the impact of what this moment is for me, because it's a new it's a new time. I have been forming this relationship to Gaia in this way for some years now, and sitting with it within myself, not sharing it with the world. And the time has come, to bring this practice forward. And it's a little bit risky in terms of the context of the tradition that I come out of, and what it means for me to take a stand with this. So maybe we can get into that a little bit more in a minute. But for those of you who may be new to me and to all of this, it's true. I have been carrying a practice that is a practice of bringing healing and protection to the earth for 30 years now. When I met a 106-year-old Lama living in a cave in Nepal back in 1990 and asked him, what can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth? And I received the practice of the earth treasure vases or vases from him, which are these little clay pots filled with prayers and offerings that are then buried in places around the world that need healing and protection. So this practice has taken me all over the world to places where there is suffering of various kinds, and also places of great beauty that are in need of protection. And each of those locations, there will be 70 locations when we're done. We have 15 of these little clay pots yet to be designated, dedicated to going out, and we're in that process. And we do this meditation, as most of you know, every full moon. And David David co-leads that with me. So in the process of carrying out this long journey of taking these little vessels around the world, I cultivated the practice of Tara, who has been with me from the beginning of my Dharma practice. I started into the Dharma in the 80s. And I had a very early experience of Tara meditating during one of my first retreats, where I didn't even know who Tara was exactly at that time. And all of a sudden, these feminine deities just began to rise up out of my heart into the space in front of me, one after another. And it was like they weren't going away, and I was seeing them not only in my meditations but in my dreams, and it went on for days. And I actually really didn't know what was going on. And it was then the next year that I went to Bhutan and met one of my first teachers and asked him about it. He said, "Oh, that was the 21 manifestations of Tara, of course." And so he gave me the practice of Tara, and I started doing it. And off and on over the course of all my long training, Tara was accompanying me. And when I really went into the most difficult part of the treasure vase journey, which was in Africa, Tara really came forward and became such a support to me to call on her. She's known to come when called. Green Tara is pictured sitting on her lotus with one foot coming down off the lotus because she's ready to jump into action. Her nature is kind of compassion in action. And so Tara, it said, was born from the tears of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of great compassion, who beheld the suffering of the world and was so overcome. And she sprung forth and dedicated herself to relieve suffering in the form of a woman, and vowed that she would always take birth as a woman. So I love her. And she is very, very commonly loved all over that part of the world. So in any case, to kind of move the story along, she would, kind of come to me, and at a certain point in this treasure vase journey, I began to have this yearning for Tara as Gaia. I really began to see her in all of her forms. Traditionally there's 21 forms of Tara, and I began to see all these emanations of this goddess that each carry a different energy. And then I began to see that, like Gaia, like the earth, takes the wrathful form and the beautiful, peaceful forms, and all of this great diversity. And I really began to experience how Gaia is this living being that is really, because also in conjunction with this, I was very disillusioned by the patriarchal world that I was practicing in. I love the teachings. I think they're so amazing, and I've been so deeply immersed. But in some of my disillusionment with the way in which it's a power structure, like so many of the religions of our times, I was looking for something else, and I was looking for a way to embody the teachings as a woman in connection to this life-giving earth that we are each a part of, the web of life. So Tara, the literal practice that I was doing, I began to see how it could be adapted to speak to this relationship to the earth as a deity, and that we could make a connection with. And she came. It really when it really happened was when I received the mantra, and that was really the first thing that happened. Is this mantra came. And in Tibetan Buddhism, we do these visualizations and we imagine and then we do a mantra, and so this is how it began to unfold.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And so we're talking, Cynthia, here about a creative adaptation that has come to you of a traditional Tibetan Buddhist mantra practice, and realigning it to Gaia as the sort of object of veneration, if you like. And as you and I have spoken about many times, that what I see as the significance of this is in how, in so many aspects of our culture, and including spirituality and religion these days, there is this rebirth of awareness in our connection with the earth. This is becoming, you could say it's an evolutionary uprising. So I think it's very significant to see it happening in all these particular places, and in this case in Tibetan Buddhism. I'm wondering if you could speak to, Cynthia, perhaps for those who are new to Tibetan Buddhism, about the Tibetan Buddhist mantra practices themselves, and what they are designed to do, and your experience of them. And then we could perhaps go to how this particular practice builds on that.
We can. I really want to do that, David. And I think there's something I want to say first, which is that I was very nervous about sharing this. And I also felt very sort of afraid, actually, because it's like kind of this thought of, well, who am I to bring forward a new practice in this tradition? And I really was, because the tradition is very, it's, I was going to say uptight. It's, there's, you follow the orders. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you receive, or you have these experiences, you don't talk about them. You work with them inside until they ripen, and then maybe eventually somewhere way down the road, they might come out. And to keep it to myself and to work with it for a long time. And I have worked with it for a long time, for many years, actually, and allowed it to, because it morphs, it becomes more clear, things happen, it becomes, it reveals itself. But I felt like I didn't have the sort of, backing to be confident that it was okay to bring this forth. And then finally, I really came to a place in my own spiritual life where I had to admit that I was being called by Gaia, and that the source, as we say in Buddhism, the source of refuge. In the Dharma, we talk about taking refuge in the three jewels, and this is kind of the basis for entering the path of awakening. The three jewels being the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, or the community that practices together. And what happened for me is that I saw the earth as an embodiment of all of those things, and that I was a part of that, and you were a part of that, and we're all part of this web of life. And to me, that is the most glorious source of refuge we could possibly imagine. And it's so reliable, because in the Dharma also, especially the Tibetan Dharma, you take refuge in the guru. And most of the gurus in our times are pretty unreliable, as a matter of fact. Love them. They bring forward a lot of beautiful teachings. But I was yearning for this, and I finally had to say, okay, I'm going to stand for this. And I guess when I was made a Lama, which you were there for in 2018, it kind of gave me the permission, and I was given that that honor in such a way that the lineage and the Lama who passed that on to me did make it clear that it was a kind of a recognition for my own path, which is a creative adaptation, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, here we go, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And as we've said as well, that there is a long tradition actually of mystics in all spiritual traditions, where there are those who carry on faithfully the received teachings and pass that along, and then there are those who evolve the tradition by bringing in something creative that usually arises from their own direct experience of source in different ways. So to me, it feels like you're in that tradition of mystics. There's a long line of people who have done what you're doing in terms of bringing something new into a tradition. And I don't know if you see it that way, or how does that land for you?
Well, I'm grateful for that perspective, because
Mm-hmm.
I guess that is my experience. I mean, it came out of my direct experience, deep
Mm-hmm.
practice of inviting and asking, and I trust it. No matter what anybody says, I trust it. I trust my own experience, and so I feel like these times are really calling forth from all of us in different ways. Ways that we can practice or cultivate awareness in relationship to the earth, because the earth is calling strongly to us to wake up. And so that's my ground.
Yeah.
That's my ground.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, you could see it as a service that you're doing to the tradition in terms of keeping it alive and current and contemporary. Um, Many people will relate to it through this avenue of revering the earth, I think.
Well, I hope so. And, sometimes we talk about the turning of the wheel of the Dharma. So when the Buddha taught for the first time, he turned the wheel and put the teachings into motion. And there have been several phases or cycles along the way since that time where the wheel has turned in different ways again and again. And I feel like we're in one of those phases now where the invitation for awakening is coming to so many of us, and that it is in relationship to the earth that is such a powerful force of change in our lives, and in order to do the work that's called, or that we're being called to do, we have to enter into partnership with the earth. And so maybe this is a new turning of the wheel. The other part of this is the notion of collective awakening versus individual awakening, which was so much the kind of a way that we experienced the call to enlightenment as an individual for such a long time. I think now we are looking to each other and to our connection with each other, and to how we can support each other in this process of awakening together. And it's that power of the awakening together that is going to really make a difference in our world today. So all of this is mixed in. And, it's interesting to notice that, or to remember that when the Buddha was sitting under the tree at the verge of his enlightenment, and I do like to think of the Buddha as a woman and not necessarily always as a man, because it helps me so much to identify with that experience. But she touched the earth in that moment when that awakening was dawning, as an invitation to have a witness to that experience. The earth was what was summoned to witness this awakening. And so I don't think there's any other any other enlightened figure that we could name that invoke the earth in that moment. And when you think about it, you know, the vastness of the earth and the capacity for the earth to be there for everything that's going on in all the diverse, multifaceted ways, you know, what greater source is there? So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Right there at the very origin point of the Buddhist tradition, there's that gesture of connecting to the earth. And so it's actually, there's a seed for this very deep in the Buddhist tradition. How else would you describe the, you know, more, say, traditional Tibetan Buddhist view of earth? What's its
Well,
place?
you know, traditionally the earth was not considered an enlightened being,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
according to the traditional teachings. And to, I think this is where some criticism could come from of this practice, from the point of view of the tradition, that that's not really, to them, that would not be a source of enlightenment. Thich Nhat Hanh's a little different. He wrote a wonderful book called Love Letter to the Earth, and he, you know, speaks about interbeing. And I think he really understands how the web of life is such an example of what we need to wake up to. But you know, it's I think going to be a stretch for the lamas inside of the tradition to consider Gaia as a source of refuge, of enlightenment. But you know, I think that's, honestly speaking, I think that's you know, a vestige from the past. I think we're coming into a new time. This is part of the evolution
yeah,
that we're in, to see things differently.
yeah,
So I invite everybody to join me on this path.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
perhaps we can turn more directly to the practice, the
Mhm,
Tara Gaia practice, and
mhm.
if you could perhaps just describe, you know, what it is. You know, I know it's an adaptation of a certain form of Tibetan Buddhist mantra practice, the Tara practice. But perhaps just in your own words, you can, you know, describe what it is and the significance of it.
Yeah. Um, okay, so as I say, this is coming from the Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Um, and in that tradition, when we do a practice like this, which is recited, it's a text that is recited, and part of that recitation, which is done more or less the same way every single time, we invoke, in this case, Gaia, and we imagine her, and we connect with her, and we see ourselves as her. So we first imagine her kind of out there, but then we also imagine ourselves as her, and we see that there's no separation. And we also make offerings to her. In, you know, this is all visualized, but we can also make actual offerings, of course. We make offerings to her in all of her countless forms, inviting her to be present with us. And in this way, we can form a relationship to her. And it's a little important point about making offerings, because it's like, and I think many indigenous traditional cultures know this, that in order to maintain balance in our relationship to the earth and to the divine and to the spirit world and to all these unseen realms, we need to make offerings. We need to, you know, give in order to receive. So this is built into the practice. And so there's a note here that I want to make about the Buddhist teachings. So in the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, we are often imagining these deities, okay, like Tara or Manjushri or Chenrezig or these different deities, okay? Each of them has a different quality. And the kind of the method that was developed by the lamas in this tradition is to personify those qualities, those enlightened qualities like compassion or wisdom or compassionate action, to personify those in such a way that we can identify with them. Okay, so it's not to say that those deities are out there somewhere for us to believe in. In fact, they are in us. They are latent qualities in us that we want to cultivate and become aware of and strengthen in ourselves. These enlightened qualities of love and kindness and compassion and wisdom. So these are aspects of our own Buddha nature, which again is something we all have. We don't have to believe in a Buddha out there. That Buddha nature is within us. And that's what I love about Buddhism, because it doesn't require belief in the way many religions do. So what we do is we imagine this quote unquote deity, goddess, before us and ourselves as that goddess. And then we dissolve both of those at the end of the practice and just rest in the state of awareness that we have invoked. So the mantra is another big part of this type of practice. And the mantra can facilitate through the recitation of sound, can facilitate us being able to go more deeply into that particular state of awareness, okay? So it takes us out of our heads. And the combination of the visualization and the mantra and, you know, all of these things that we're saying, all of that kind of like stills the mind and puts us into another reality. So in the Gaia practice, we imagine that, well, there's a lot. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because this is what I'm going to teach on the weekend of February 8th and 9th. But just to give you all a little taste, the Gaia practice, we imagine that the way she came to me, okay, is and everybody's going to have it. That's going to be really an interesting process when we start sharing this, because I think people will see her very differently. And I think my visualization can be a touchstone, but I think it will open things for others who might have their own way of seeing things. We'll talk about this when we get into the actual practice in the course, but I like to imagine her with 4 arms. I've always wanted to have 4 arms. I think it would be so useful. And in this case, 2 of the arms are in the form of granting protection and healing, the way Tara is pictured, with one hand up and one hand down in her lap. And one is for the protection and one is for the healing. And the other 2 hands in this case are holding a vase. And of course, because of the treasure vase practice that I've carried for so long, that's an earth treasure vase. And so I see her with these 4 arms. And when we do the mantra recitation, what begins to happen is that the contents of the vase come into the crown of our heads like nectar. And we receive this blessing from Gaia. And then we do the mantra, and the mantra spins in our hearts. And this is typical of Tibetan Buddhist practice. There's the mantra turns around our very heart of hearts. And we imagine that as we recite the mantra, it spins. And as that mantra spins around our own heart, it sends light out into the world to bring the blessings of this practice to all beings. And then during the recitation of Gaia's mantra, we also imagine this light flowing out and through into the body of the earth, carrying all of these blessings into the song lines and the meridians of the body of the earth herself, which also, those of you doing the treasure vase practice, activates the locations of all of the treasure vases all around the world for this global healing mandala that we've created. So, so that's how we're going to work with the mantra. And there's so much more that could be said actually about that, but it maybe gives you a little taste.
Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful visualization, and I just wanted to share that when you taught this to us for the first time, we were in the Himalayas in Nepal, uh, in a very remote Buddhist monastery where the Earth Treasure Vase practice originated from. It was a very auspicious place to receive this practice, and I remember my own experience of it. It was a very profound experience of, I felt my heart very engaged with having this practice in such a powerful way to honor the sacred dimensions of Earth, and I felt it was opening this channel of connection between my deeper soul and the Earth, um, in ways that were very powerful and very new. And there was something about having this over and over again, this sort of dedication towards Gaia, um, and then being able to open my eyes and see Gaia all around me, that made the practice, just extremely real and very relevant. So
Mm-hmm.
that, that was my first taste of this practice.
Thank
Um,
you for sharing that, David. It was
yeah,
such a special moment, and
yeah,
really the only time that I've ever shared this practice. It was with a very small group that, we did this pilgrimage back to where it all began,
yeah,
and so that was the beginning of what we're carrying forward today.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and
Mm.
it's go ahead. Yeah, did you want to say
Well,
something more?
well, just to say, as we're talking about it, I'll just share what I sense is this something like a hunger that's there. Um, it's like energy is wanting to move in this direction, and to come through the traditions with this fresh energy of connecting with Gaia. I think it is part of the emerging feminine on the earth that we're moving in this direction. And I imagine people who have, especially those who've had a Buddhist practice, who are looking for fresh ways to um, uh, keep their practice alive or find new outlets for it. It's the sense there's a readiness right now for this particular kind of practice. So it's just what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm wondering, Cynthia, would it be a good time to practice a little form of it? You're mentioning about the mantra itself,
Mhm.
whether we might be exposed to that.
Yeah, yeah, I would love that. And I loved what you said about looking around after doing this practice, up in Nepal, looking around and seeing the earth, seeing Gaia in all these forms, way up high in those mountains, and just feeling like, you know, she's everywhere. And 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 that's what I feel every single time I do this, right? So I'm really, really excited to teach it, and also to have an ongoing group of people who are interested in really cultivating the practice with me, to meet on a regular basis and see what happens. This is all like a really big adventure. So
Yeah.
let's do it. So yeah, let's start right now by doing a little bit of the mantra practice without going into the whole, um, you know, recitation or visualization. At the end of this, I'll maybe say a little bit more about the retreat for those who are interested. But for now, why don't we do the mantra recitation? And let me get a drink, and let's take a breath, and then I'll share the mantra. Mm. think I'm going to ring the bell. This is a moment. So let's everyone just take a breath with me and come into the moment and to receive this mantra. So the mantra for Gaia is goes like this: Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Hung. Excuse me, Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. That's Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. So Om is the seed syllable for the awakened heart mind. Gaia is Mother Earth, the goddess. Mandala is a symbol of wholeness. It's usually a symbolic, geometric illustration of the enlightened mind or the enlightened universe. And it is a symbol for wholeness. It's a big part of my teachings. And we're invited into a mandala through this practice. Siddhi is a word that speaks to the enlightened powers that arise out of the practice of awareness. The accomplishments that come, not worldly accomplishments as much as spiritual accomplishments. Broom is I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. Pala, Siddhi Pala. Pala is the word for fruit in Sanskrit. So this is talking about the fruit that comes, from the powers, the enlightened powers, the siddhis that arise from our practice of cultivating this awareness of Gaia within ourselves and in the world around us. The fruits that come, the awakening that is possible as a sign, that we are progressing on the path. Broom is the seed syllable for earth. The 5 elements, earth, air, fire, water, and space, are the keys to the mandala, which is the center in the 4 directions. So in the case of Gaia, we're invoking the earth element, and that seed syllable in Sanskrit is broom. And that's also the seed syllable that is found in our hearts as we recite the mantra. So we imagine ourselves as Gaia, and we invoke her all around us, above, below, in front, in back, and either side, because she's everywhere. And we see her coming into us, and then we imagine us as an embodiment of Gaia ourselves. We see this seed syllable broom in our hearts. And as we recite the mantra, Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Broom Ah, Ah being the sound of primordial awareness itself, residing in the throat, we send the blessings out into the world as the mantra turns around our own heart. And we can imagine our own bodies becoming like the body of the earth. And the blessings not only flowing out to benefit all beings in all realms, all living beings, trees, rivers, animals, people, young, old, of all colors, cultures and communities, mountains, oceans, all of it, this web of life, receiving the blessings in the form of light going out from our hearts, pouring into the song lines and the meridians of the earth. So we'll do one round of the mala, is 108 beads, and we'll recite it out loud together. So please join me. See what happens. Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. David, for this, maybe turn off your audio because there's a delay. So again, Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brum Ah. 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 Om Gaia Mandala Siddhi Pala Brahma. Om Gandala Siddhi Pala Brahma. Om Gaia Mandala 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 Siddhi Pala Brahma. Ah. By this merit, may we swiftly realize the state of Arya Gaia, and may all beings without exception also realize this very state. Like the wealth of a wish-granting jewel and the excellent vase, may the purpose of all wishes be unobstructedly accomplished. Arya Gaia, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, may we possess the good fortune of never separating from your loving kindness. Alalaho.
Alalaho. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It feels like a very sacred moment that we just shared. And I know that you're going to be teaching this in depth for the very first time. It's never been taught before. And I'm wondering if you could share with those who may be interested in really going further with this, what that's going to look like.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll have a retreat via Zoom. So wherever you're coming from is fine, although I know the time zones do sometimes make things difficult for people. But the first time that I'll be teaching this is February 8th and 9th, just a few weeks from now. And so I'm going to actually, in a minute, I'll put the link to register for that into the wherever it is on our screen here somewhere, maybe in the Q&A section. I can't remember where it goes, David, but I'll put that in. If you're interested, you can sign up. The registration will close on midnight of February 6th, because on the 7th, I need to send out the practice materials, which will include a copy of the text to everyone who is going to participate. And then on the 8th and 9th, we'll do the retreat. Just a little note that if you do register, be sure to click on the Keep Me Updated box when you register, because that will allow you to receive the access information for the call, which will be a special link for the Zoom. So the retreat schedule will be on Saturday, the 8th. The first session is from 9 to 12 Pacific time. That will be an introduction, kind of going back over the historical background and learning some things about some of what we've talked about today and some other things. And then from 10 to 12 Pacific time will be the transmission of the practice. So this is called the lung. It's like the voice transmission of this practice, which will be to take everyone through that as a kind of ritual. And so that is kind of the key to receiving the practice. And then we'll have a break, and session 2 will begin at 1 o'clock Pacific time and go to 4 Pacific time. And that will be a kind of line by line explanation and teaching of every single part of the practice. So very in-depth and very interesting and enlightening, I hope. So it's basically 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, with an hour break from 12 to 1 for everybody to go off and have a bite and breathe some fresh air, go for a walk and come back. Then on Sunday, we're meeting, it's basically from 9 to 2. The third session from 9 to 11 will be for us to practice together. So to having received this and going through it and getting an understanding of it, then to actually do the practice together. And then the fourth session from 12 to 2 will be questions and answers around what you experienced and what you have questions about and all of that. And it will also include at the end some discussion about next steps and participation in an ongoing practice. So that's kind of the overview. One thing to note is that this is not going to be recorded. This today is, and we'll send that out to everybody who registered. But for the retreat, it's really based on a live direct transmission. And so we're not recording it. And I'm really asking everyone who's interested to show up and to show up for the whole thing. And if you can't and it's not convenient, then know that I will offer this again this year. I don't know when, but I will be offering it again. And you can let me know you're interested, and that will be good. So we can grow the circle of people who are doing the practice, which I would really love to see. So yeah, and the very last thing is that for everyone who registers, we're going to donate $8 to Tree Sisters per person. So that means each person is planting 16 trees to do this retreat. And
Awesome.
if there's a group, you know, it's a whole forest. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, this new partnership with Tree Sisters. And I couldn't be more thrilled about it. Yeah. So let me put this link now out for the group if y'all want to register. And we'll also put it in the email with the recording. So that will be coming to you later. So let's see here. I'm not sure quite how to do this, David.
I'm not quite sure either. Maybe you can you put something in the Q&A box yourself?
That's what I'm trying to do. But I don't, sorry, everyone. There's a few questions here that I'm seeing. The trees, thank you. I will be teaching it in Santa Fe. If you're in Santa Fe, and you're interested in coming to this live with me, you could come in live with me. Get in touch. There will be a few people in person. Mostly people will be calling in on Zoom. My chat is not showing. The Q&A is showing, but I don't know how to. I'm going to just answer. Yep.
Yeah, maybe you could just respond to one of the questions.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And people can look in the answered tab. It will move it to the answered tab in the Q&A box. That's maybe under Jennifer's recent comment there.
Yeah, I'm going to type my answer right there. There it is. That's the link to click on to go to register, and I'll put that there.
Oh, so I see Tara from Tree Sisters put in the link to the online retreat. Do you see that?
She did. Oh, hi, Tara. Thank you. Here it is, too. I meant to put it there like that. So there's that. Thank you, Tara. This is Tara from Tree Sisters. Yeah, if you're in Santa Fe or coming to Santa Fe, get in touch. You can reach me at cynthia@earthtreasurevase.org. That's my email address. And yeah, I'm thrilled to have all of you Tree Sisters here. It's been such a beautiful thing. I want to say, in response to someone here about Zoom participants, we decided for this today to not have Zoom participants visible, but we will have that, of course, for the retreat itself, to create a sense of intimacy and connection between all of us practicing together. So that's definitely happening there. And our full moon meditations have all of our participants visible as well, so we can connect with each other. Not everybody chooses to be visible, but those who do, we get to know that way. And thank you, it says, for being willing to stand in my authority and teach the practice. I thank you for saying that. Yeah. David?
And Cynthia, I think you had mentioned that after the retreat that there will be an opportunity for those who want continued support to join a monthly group. Is that correct?
That is correct. What I will be planning to do is, hang on here, I'm just sending that link again. I hope everybody's getting that. And if you haven't gotten it and you are confused or anything, just know that we'll be sending out the email of this recording of this call, and in that email will come the link to register for the retreat. So yeah, and what I'm very excited about, David, is to once people have begun to learn the practice, to start a monthly group to do the practice together. And it would just mean coming together at a certain time every month. I don't yet know what that time or day is, but we will know it by the time we do the retreat. And then we can just continue. And of course, I really encourage people to do it on a more regular basis than just once a month. But the once a month will give us a time to be together and answer any questions that people might have about the practices they're doing it themselves, and also to share our experience of the practice, so that we can kind of learn from each other and see how it's taking root in our lives and what's coming up and what we're seeing as a result of doing this. And I think for those who are doing the treasure vase practice, it's going to be a very beautiful, interesting combination of things to do, because as you can see, there's a way in which this relates to the treasure vase practice, and it could really bring energy to that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Wonderful, Cynthia.
Yeah.
And just wondering if you have, is there any final kind of thoughts, feelings that you'd like to share as we're summing up? It just feels like a beautiful moment here, the giving birth to this new practice. And any last words before we close for today?
Gosh, well, just thank you, great gratitude to all of my teachers, really, and to this amazing journey of this life that has taken me all around the world for such a long time, has borne this fruit, this phala, that is now taking form as Tara Gaia. And I just really pray that the practice, can be a support to everyone who decides to pick her up and practice her with me and with yourselves, that. And I know that the Vajrayana style practice is not necessarily for everyone. There's a million Dharma doors. They say technically 84,000 ways to open the path of awakening. And each of us is different. Each of us, it requires something special, because none of us are the same. But so different kinds of ways of practicing speak to us, and really work for us. And this is only one of many, but it's an offering. So I give it to you as an offering, and really deeply pray that it may benefit the earth and all of us in these times, because it is time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so beautiful, Cynthia. I'm so honored to be at this moment with you, and I can feel from many of the comments and just the feeling here that there's a lot of gratitude for this opening, this sort of new opening, to allow this deeper connection with Earth, the sacred dimensions of Earth. And thank you for all you're doing to open those doors for so many people. So thank you so much.
Thanks for being here with me, David.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your presence and your sustained presence here on this call today. And I look forward to meeting, I hope, many of you over the weekend and beyond. So get in touch, and we'll take it where it needs to go.
Yeah. Namaste, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Alalaho.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.